Welcome, everybody. My name is Craig. I am also known as the Natural Medic. Today I have Stephanie Pearson with me. We are going to talk about her latest book. We'll let her get to that in just a second. I'll let her introduce herself and kind of give a little background, then we'll start diving in some questions about her projects and what's going on. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Hey Craig, thanks for having me. It's fun to be here. And I would say my background, I was an editor at Outside Magazine for a while, and now I am a contributing editor, and I have written a couple books for National Geographic. I've written a children's book about national parks and just general lover of the outdoors.
And I actually have a copy of your book we're going to talk about today, which is right here. And we'll dive into the depth of that here in a moment. But great book with a lot of interesting hikes in there. So, you've been with National Geographic, involved with them and outside editor or editor for Outside Magazine, sorry. Was there any specific moment or trip early in your life that made you realize that storytelling in the outdoors were your true calling?
Yeah, it's funny. I was just looking through my old diaries. I just had one from 1976, and one of the entries was I fell in the lake and had to get stitches. And so that's like the first recorded journal entry. But since then, I grew up in northern Minnesota, grew up around lakes and paddling, and
Okay.
and so I've really always had an organic relationship to the outdoors, and then
Right.
really loved magazines and storytelling, and went to graduate school. And by coincidence, Outside Magazine was based in Chicago at the time, and that was the magazine that I really wanted to work for, and that's where I was going to graduate school.
Okay.
So they were moving down to Santa Fe, New Mexico the year I graduated. So that was like a cosmic convergence because New Mexico was where I wanted to be and Outside was going to be there. So I got an internship in 1995, and that's really been a 30-year relationship. So yeah.
Wow. Kind of funny how things work out. Like, so I can understand your fascination with the state because it's a
Yeah.
what. So how look all the places that you have been. I mean, how have you seen that the culture of outdoor exploration change over the years? What is your thought on that?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, the interesting thing that with the start of my career was it was bookended by, at the beginning, by John Krakauer's book Into Thin Air. That
Hmm.
was the first year that I was at Outside, the first year or two that I was outside. And so that was really, Outside was very much sort of the maintainer of the outdoor culture. And now things have become so much more mainstream, so much more easily accessible in terms of information. Everybody's a storyteller. And that is both a good thing and a bad thing. I think that we used to see the world through the lens of great National Geographic photographers or whatever. And now everybody has that ability and that access, but they also have the responsibility to do the right thing out in the outdoors. And so it goes both ways, but it's changed a lot
Yeah.
in the last 30 years, I would say.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I think just even like we mentioned before we started recording here, talking about just the change of venue with COVID and how many people, I think, probably were being stuck inside during that whole event made a lot of people come out. There's record numbers of people going to national parks, and some of the, like you said, some of the people are not as prepared maybe as they need to be. And so they're seeing, a lot of different experiences with that.
Yeah, I'm sure as an EMT that a lot.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, right here in my immediate area, we don't really have any rescues but I know that in the surrounding states, some of the Four Corners, I'm pretty close to, Arizona and Utah and Colorado. There's a lot of things that I read about people, not making the best decisions and having to get some help. But that's all part of it. Uh,
Yeah.
so what do you think about being a National Geographic explorer? How does that?
Yeah, that's a huge honor. I received a grant from National Geographic. And so National Geographic, the magazine, and National Geographic Society are two separate entities under the same
Hmm.
umbrella. And the National Geographic Society is the one that gives money to a different money to scientists, they give money to educators, they give money to what they call storytellers. And so
Hmm.
I was given a grant to study Lake Superior, which is my backyard. And so that is how I came into that National Geographic Explorer fold. And then once you're an explorer, you're always an explorer. So there's thousands of us across the globe. So it's a really cool community because they really encourage connection among the community, and there's different disciplines within the community. So It's exciting. It's a little intimidating. I always feel a little imposter syndrome for sure, but it's inspiring to see all these other explorers when we get together. So it's fun.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I remember as a
Yeah.
kid reading the magazine, and I guess there was a TV show, right? Wasn't there a TV show? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
there's
it's
yeah.
kind of a big, it's a big out there kind of situation, and being thrust into that, I bet feels kind of interesting. And talking about your book, which I'll raise it up again here, and 100 hikes of a lifetime. We've got a very big, diverse country. So how did you take the entire U.S. and narrow it down just 100 to 100 hikes? I mean, it had to be a monumental task to figure that out.
Yeah, that was tough. I mean, I first of all, my editor at National Geographic said that there are a couple of hikes that they wanted us to include, namely the three biggies, the Pacific Crest, the Continental Divide, and the Appalachian Trail. But then it was like fair game. Anything was fair game. So what I really wanted to do was include every state and every
Hmm.
territory. And a lot of the hikes in here they're big hikes, but then there are some really small hikes
Hmm.
that like in Georgia, I think it's less than a mile. And the reason that I included that was more for the cultural aspect of it than the actual hiking
Oh,
experience.
sure.
And so that's really what I wanted to convey in this book was that there's a hike, no matter where you live in this country, there's a hike that you can do that will either inspire you physically or intellectually, or it will speak to your cultural heritage. So I really try to make sure that I included all of the country in this book.
I mean, that's great because I agree with you. There's hikes in people's backyard. They don't even necessarily investigate. They just, people focus on the big, national park ones or the the ones that go all the way across the country like the Appalachian or something like that. And there's if you look, there's always something in your backyard, I think, that offers a lot of benefits and a lot of things that you can get from it.
Yeah, totally.
So you kind of touched on this in the previous question, but you have the heavy hitters in there, like is Rim to Rim is in there in Grand Canyon?
Yep,
Okay.
yep. I think it's the first one in the book.
Yeah.
Yep.
But you said it was important to represent something from all of the states. So how with kind of just diving a little bit deeper, like how did you
Mhm.
figure out other trails that were maybe not as flashy or not as well known?
Yeah, it was a combination. A lot of these trails I've hiked personally,
Okay.
so not all of them.
Sure.
I will tell you, I haven't hiked all
Right.
100. But then through the community of people I know, I reached out to people in areas who I know are hikers and who I know their areas really well. And I asked them for some trails that may be really interesting for a specific reason. And then I also included trails that I want to do and that I wanted to learn more about.
Yeah.
And over the course of the time in my outside reporting, I've come across most of these trails at one point or
Sure.
another and just wanted to learn more about them if I hadn't done them myself. So, yeah, I learned a ton reporting this book.
Oh, I bet. I
Yeah.
bet. Including your research and your formatting the book and getting your, doing your on the boots, I guess, kind of ground stuff in addition to collaboration. Like, how long did it take to get this whole project, like start to finish, do you think?
For a book, it's a quick turnaround. I think it's about 2 years from assignment date until publication date.
Okay.
And so the first process is you have to submit an outline. You have to do the research to submit an outline that the editors will approve. And then I went on this big road trip after that to report probably about 10 trails. And that's really all that I had time for in that time slot.
Hmm.
And so then I had a pretty rigorous schedule to keep in order to report out all of this when it was due. I think my first draft was due in April. So it was like a year's
Hmm.
cycle. And then the second year is editing and photography
Sure.
and proofreading and all that stuff. So from start to finish, it was 2 years.
Okay. Well, a lot of moving parts, of course, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And we kind of touched on this a little bit with the previous questions, but I mean, you've got other trails people don't think about as much, like, for example, the Superior Hiking Trail, which is,
Yeah.
I guess, right there in your backyard.
It is literally, it's 50 yards from where I'm standing right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's,
And
yeah.
just noting that it's talking about the elevation gain. What's that?
Yeah, I'm not sure what exactly the elevation gain is. I know it's a lot, but the Superior Hiking Trail is a perfect example of a Midwestern trail that people don't know about, but it's incredible.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons it's so incredible is because it goes up and down. It follows the northwestern shoreline of Lake
Hmm.
Superior. And so it has to go up and down these very steep rivers. And so you pass a lot of waterfalls, you pass a lot of inland lakes, you're on the cusp of the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness.
Right.
So it's just beautiful country, and it's a mountain range, but it's a lot of elevation gain, and it's rocky and rooty, and it's a tough trail, a very tough trail.
Yeah, some of those ones in the Midwest are really interesting because you don't think about them being as rugged or as, maybe as interesting as, the ones that are, more promoted out west or the AT or the Continental Divide or PCT, something like that. People are not thinking about that. And that's kind of amazing that those are in there and were included. So how do you feel about those kind of lesser, those kind of unsung heroes, I guess you'd say, trail wise?
I love them because for one, I think they serve a great purpose in that they're close. Not everybody can hop in their car and hike the Grand Teton or
Right.
climb the Grand Teton
Sure.
every weekend.
Yeah.
So I love that people are in great proximity. Like the Buckeye Trail in Ohio, it circles the state. And so somewhere in the state, you're going to be close to some point on that trail.
Hmm.
So I love the accessibility to some of these trails. And I also just think that the beauty that they offer is unparalleled and it's maybe more subtle than a summit, but it's absolutely as beautiful in its own
Oh,
way.
yeah.
And I also like to disperse the impact of hiking too, if
Oh,
possible,
absolutely.
because that can be an issue.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It kind of just goes back to what you're saying, those lesser known kind of unsung heroes. There's something for everybody, even in their backyard. A couple hours away, you have probably some kind of cool area that's not really as well known, and you can
Yeah,
still get a good experience.
absolutely.
Okay, the American Discovery Trail. We talked about that one in there.
Yes, that's the big one.
Yeah, I mean that's a big one, and as we said, not everybody has time to do an AT or a North Country or anything like that. So what do you think is a realistic goal for somebody that wants to do something like that?
I think anything is possible. It depends on how much time you have. It depends on how much money you have. It depends on how interested you are in being uncomfortable. I think if the American Discovery Trail literally traverses the country and all you have to do is put one foot in front of the other to some extent, but
Yeah,
big hikes require a lot of planning. They require a lot of money in some cases, and
right.
they require a lot of training. And so I would just say do your research and find a trail. And a lot of these trails in this book are precursors you can do to one of the bigger trails. Like a lot of the trails are, so you want to try the Appalachian Trail, try the Benton MacKaye Trail before you try the Appalachian Trail because it's a shorter
Hmm.
distance. It's actually more difficult, but there are trails of all lengths. So I would just say build up to these bigger ones, or else you might find yourself in a world of hurt, a la Cheryl Strayed, and
Yep.
yeah,
California's Lost Coast Trail. It's famous for its raw, untouched nature, and I think as we become more and more separated from nature, just in the our society, how vital do you think these connections are to? This is talking about a particular, a coastal experience, but any wilderness experience. Do you think that's vital and part of our life now?
oh, I think it's increasingly difficult, but I think it's increasingly important. The Last Coast Trail is one of those trails, and that's a tough trail because it's got tides that you have to deal with, and you really have to understand tidal charts, and it's really remote. So you have to do your research, but also I think it just places, wilderness areas that we have left, they're under attack right now, unfortunately, with our current administration. Every public land is.
Yeah.
And so, for one, you have to enjoy it while we still have it. But also, two, I think, like the old saying is, if you don't understand what you have, you're not going to understand what you've lost. And
Hmm.
so I think it's really important for people to get out there and to see these places, at whatever comfort level they're at.
Absolutely. And it goes back again to what we were saying about getting out in your own backyard. I mean, there's so many opportunities that people don't really think about because, maybe they're focused on some other, I've got to go to Yellowstone or I've got to go to Great Smoky Mountains or something to have that wilderness experience when they can actually have that same experience a little bit closer. And I think people don't, they're kind of sidelining that experience because, I've got to do this and I've got to do this. And everybody's so busy. And I think it's an important, essential part of nowadays society is to try to take that time away and get out into nature and enjoy it.
Yeah, 100% agree.
Now, next question we have is talking about Guadalupe Peak in Texas, which, of course, me being a Texan, I've been on
Yeah.
top of that one 2 times. The
Yep.
first time I hiked it was back in college, a little different experience. Of course, I was younger and etc. I don't remember it being that difficult,
Yeah, that's a difficult
but I
peak.
did it. Let's see. I believe I did it in October of 2024 was the last time I did it. But from your perspective, what do you think is a common misconception
Uh,
about hiking that one, especially just in general hiking in the Southwest? What do you think? And I can follow up on
Yeah, I
that.
mean, the Southwest is a huge area too. There's New Mexico, there's Arizona, there's Texas. And one of the first experiences in a national park I had was Big Bend National Park. And I was so just blown away by the scale and size and geology of that park and the ability to look into Mexico.
Right.
I grew up in northern Minnesota and there were javelinas running around and that was really exotic. And so that was a formative place for me. And then going to Carlsbad Caverns,
Hmm.
that was so different than where I had grown up. And
Yeah.
the Southwest, I've spent a lot of time in Sedona, which is totally different. It's a very concentrated, just incredibly beautiful area of red rocks
Oh,
that
sure.
is a place that can be overcrowded, but it's
Yeah.
so beautiful. Guadalupe Peak in Texas, I think people don't understand the altitude in Texas. That's a high peak and it's a steep peak
Right.
and it's straight up. And so I think most people, when thinking of Texas, don't think of that kind of altitude for one, as well as just steep
Oh, for
scramble.
sure. Yeah.
But I love hiking in the Southwest. It's one of my favorite places to hike. I love New Mexico too.
Yeah, and the Guadalupes, of course, are seen across the border into New Mexico. They're almost more New Mexican than they are Texan, because, like you said, people don't
Yeah.
really think about that. And of course, my part of Texas that I grew up in was on the other side, East Texas.
Yeah.
So I was out there with the lakes and the rivers and pine trees and things like that. And you get out to West Texas, especially the Guadalupe Peak area, Big Bend, and you're like, this is like a totally different experience.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And people
Yes.
don't think about how
It's
rugged that terrain is and how
Yep.
little water there is and how much they have to like
Yeah.
hump in there to stay hydrated because you feel it and probably up there in Minnesota too. It gets humid, I imagine. In East
Yep.
Texas, the same thing. You feel that sweat just dripping off of you. And over here in the Southwest, you don't even, you're like, why is my shirt wet? I don't even know.
Yeah, and I love that about the Southwest, just the dry heat of the
Yeah.
hiking and you're right, water, that's the Arizona Trail, I think they do a really good job of caching water along
Hmm.
the way and you
Hmm.
can't obviously rely on that,
Right.
but there are people who there's bike races along that trail. And
Hmm.
so but a lot of these trails, yeah, you're right. I mean, you have to pack in your water and, or you could get in trouble,
Yeah.
which yeah, is something you really need to think about.
Yeah. I think backpacking in that park, I think you have to pack in your own water because whatever minute amount of water is available from old ranching operations. They
Oh
pretty much
yeah.
just reserve that for the wildlife because it's so dry.
Yep.
But yeah, it's a great park and a great area. I need to go back to Big Bend sometime. Not right now
Yeah.
because it's June. It's
Yeah.
hot.
120
But in
degrees.
the fall maybe. Who knows?
Yeah.
So tough one here as we finish up this section of the questions. If you had to pick just one trail
Oh.
out of the book, you had no logistical barriers. So money's not an object, time's not an object. Which one would you go to?
I would have to go for Gates of the Arctic.
Okay.
And that's actually in Alaska. I love Alaska. I've been to Alaska a number of times, but I've never been to Gates of the Arctic. And that's back to your question about wilderness. That's a true wilderness
Oh, for
where
sure.
you're not really following a trail and you won't follow a trail,
Hmm.
but you just get dropped in and you can just have the opportunity to see the huge caribou herds and grizzly if you run across them,
Oh
and
yeah.
so many other wildlife, which I think that opportunity to have that opportunity to be in that kind of expansive wilderness would really be exciting to me. If I were with somebody else, I don't think I'd want to be out there by
Yeah,
myself.
I tend to do a lot of solo stuff when I go out because if I was waiting for somebody, I'd be waiting a long time. But Alaska would definitely not be a place I would want to go by myself. At
Yeah.
least have a buddy or buddies. Okay, so photography wise, there's some really great photography, of course, and in all the National Geographic things, that's kind of one of their highlights of their beautiful photography over the years. Like, how closely do you get to work with those photographers to make sure that imagery matches with what you're trying to get across in your writing?
National Geographic is so good at that and so expert at that. I had the opportunity after it was written, I had the opportunity to go through and look at all the photos
Hmm.
and comment on the photos and especially make sure that they were in the right place. And there weren't many, there were one or two photos maybe that were maybe not the right place. But otherwise, I didn't have any objection to the photos that they had. They just are such
Oh
masters
yeah,
at
yeah,
evoking awe.
sure.
So I didn't take any of the photos. I wish I did, but I didn't. And yeah, but I think they did a really good job of diversity and just beautiful
Yeah, yeah,
images.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one thing I could say definitely about. I think if you talk about National Geographic magazine or any of their television productions or whatever, everything is really just stunningly. The visuals are very well done.
Yeah.
It's like can't get any better than that. So what a
Yes.
fortunate thing.
Yeah.
And of course, the whole thing about making people aware of these areas is, it can increase the popularity. I mean, I'm sure since social media and YouTube and everything has come along, people are in the Appalachian Trail more often, and there's a lot more impact to that, just as an example. So how do you balance, and I have the same problem with some of this content that I'm putting out as well. How do you balance that?
That's a good question, and it's one I struggle with increasingly as more and more information is out in the world. But I do think that there's a way. I go back to my dad's advice: take responsibility for yourself, take responsibility to be out there, be educated. I was an educated outdoors person. I worked up in the Boundary Waters as a guide. I took emergency wilderness training.
Yeah.
I took the steps I needed to take to be out there as responsibly as I could be, given the fact that there are also acts of God and nature. So
Right.
so I think not everybody needs to take an EMT course, but there's basic leave no trace, and I think it's we have to put a little bit more of the responsibility on the people who are going out there and say, listen, if you want to be out there, you need to take some responsibility for being out there. You need to, and then it is, if we're putting something like this out there, we need to, it's our responsibility to educate them for sure. But I think it's also all of our responsibility to take care of what we've got. It's our land
Yeah.
collectively.
Yeah. The United States is definitely a unique, just the evolution of, our public lands is kind of a unique, testament to, what we have access to. And that's a great thing. But like you said, we have to each take our own responsibility to be somewhat self-reliant on taking care and, not leaving our trash and having at least some understanding and training about what we're,
Mhm.
what we're out there doing.
Yeah. And I would take that even a step further too and just have some awareness of what the land is, what traditional lands you're on,
Oh
or,
yeah.
what's the history, like the Chilkoot Trail. There's just so much historical there. So many of these trails have been there for so long and have held such history, and that's really a cool part of them. So it just enriches your experience.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Like here in my area, I keep running into different places that I've been venturing. Like I was just up in Dinosaur National Monument, I guess the end of May, and the Escalante, like the kind of the beginnings of the Spanish Trail, which they started off in Santa Fe about the same time the United States declared independence, like in
Yeah.
1776, and they didn't make it to California, but their idea was it's like, okay, we can do this.
Yeah.
We're gonna make it to California, but I keep running into the that trail, and they actually crossed the Green River right there in what is now Dinosaur National Monument.
Wow.
You know, how all that stuff kind of links together.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Yeah. And we already talked about solo. We're not going to go to Alaska solo. We both decided that. But you've and then I can say the same thing. We both done solo trips. We've gone with other people or major expeditions. How do you feel that solo wilderness experience compares to, going with other people?
I mean, it tests you mentally and physically. You have to be so much more aware of your surroundings. You have to be aware of how you're doing things. And then also, you just get that fullness of the experience when you're by yourself and just can experience that solitude. And solitude's a wonderful thing. And when you're with other people, there's just I would say more dynamics. I think one of the things about hiking that can be challenging is not everybody hikes at the same pace.
Yeah.
People's idea of fun may be a little bit different. Some people might really want to crush the summit, whereas other people might not have as much of interest in that. And so I think sometimes when you're hiking with others, there's just more group dynamics, and they can be awesome or they can be challenging depending on the group. But I think I haven't done a solo wilderness trip for quite a while. I traveled by myself quite a lot, but I haven't done that in recent years as
Hmm.
much, which I need to do. It's a good thing to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think being a solo person, you have to, like you said, you have to kind of know your limitations. But the benefits of the solo, I think, in a lot of ways, is that you're not really on a time schedule other than your own. Well, I don't want to say want to go hike this trail. I don't want to want to go here. I don't want to do this. You have a lot more freedom. But like I said, it comes
Yes.
with more responsibility of taking care of your own
Yep.
experiences and needs.
Yes.
Um, let's talk about gear for a second. So,
Mhm.
outdoor, and I've seen this as well, because I 30 years ago was when I was for my bachelor's degree, and I was, going out from East Texas to West Texas to Big Bend and Guadalupe's and all that kind of stuff. And, outdoor tech has changed and evolved. Now,
Yeah.
if you have this one piece of gear that you refuse to hit the trail with, what is that one piece of gear that you take with you?
I guess it would depend where I am. I'm prone to a little bit of melanoma, so I need some sun protection. So I have a Patagonia sun hoodie that I hike in all the time
Okay.
that I just love because it's cooling and it protects me from the sun. So I'm a big proponent of sun protection. So I would say that would be one of the first things I would take off the top of my head.
Okay. It's a good choice. Yeah, I don't have a Patagonia one. I have one that I found on Amazon that was I feel it's up to par. It's probably not as
Yeah.
good, but it's
Yeah, no, if it protects you, it's
but
good.
being out here in the Southwest, sun protection is very important because
Yeah.
many of these trails out here have no shade or very little shade compared to where I come from in
Yep.
East Texas. The trees are only so tall, and
Yeah.
so it's a little bit different. And then, of course, it's a lot drier and good to have that protection. So moving on to our next little area here. So you have this book says Hikes of a Lifetime, and I don't feel like it'd be intimidating to me because I'm an avid hiker, been an avid hiker for a long time.
Hmm. Yep.
But for somebody that just picks up this book for the first time, or they see this book at the bookstore and they're like, I think this sounds cool, but like, how do I get started? So what would your advice be for a beginner hiker to get started in being a hiker?
That's a good question. And I think you're right too. In writing a book like this, you want to include all the big ones. But I think I wanted this book to be aspirational. Like maybe you don't necessarily do all of them, and it's not necessarily a guidebook, but I do think that you can take sections of trails. And so I would say just for a beginner, know, like you said, actually have a good sense of your limitations. Don't limit yourself to your limitations, but
Hmm.
when you're starting out, just try a couple mile section. If you live on the East Coast and you have a section of the Appalachian Trail near you,
Yeah.
just try a section. Try a 5 mile section of it. Or if you're in Massachusetts, there's a trail that goes through multiple towns. So you have a lot of bail off points in a lot of these hikes. And I would just say know your limits and then know that you don't have to reach the summit if you're out trying to hike a Fortuner. There's really no rules. You make up your own rules,
Yeah.
and so just do as much as you want, because if you're out there for 20 minutes, you're going to get a benefit. And there's not a big investment in terms of what you need for hiking. And that's one of the reasons I love about it. You need a good pair of shoes.
Hmm.
You don't even need a pair of hiking shoes,
Right.
really. And eventually you might need to build more of a kit, but you don't need much to start off with. And I'm also a big proponent of trekking poles when you do bigger hikes, just because I think they use your arms and
Yeah.
take a little load off as you start doing bigger distances and stuff. Things like that you can take along. But yeah, I just say start. Yeah, and start small and keep incrementally moving up.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. I think that's a good way to tackle it. The fortunate thing about here being in Farmington in New Mexico is we have a lot of nice trails that go along our rivers here because we have 3 different rivers that go through Farmington. So we have a lot of nice trails with a lot of nice views, and it's cooler down there, and it's a good place to get started. And then additionally, like I said at the beginning, I think before we started recording, I can jump in the car and go north, and I'll be in the San Juans, around Durango, Colorado, in an hour.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a
Yep.
fortunately there's a lot in this area, but I think anywhere you are, I think you can probably find some place, a local park or a state park
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yep.
Doesn't have to be Yellowstone for your first hike.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's funny you say that. Whenever I drive south, I stop at state parks and eat lunch, and I just go for a little hike.
Yeah.
And state parks have beautiful little hikes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes not little.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, some
Yeah.
of them are kind of a little bit more than you expected. So anyway, you've written about a bunch of different things. What is your next project on the horizon? Do you have anything in the works?
Yeah, I have some projects this summer. I don't have a big book project. I'm planning to go to Canada in a couple of weeks to explore some lesser known parks in Ontario
Nice.
that I love. And also, I'm going to do a little trip on the Mississippi River.
Okay.
And these are just for smaller stories. But
Uh-huh.
yeah, I love being in Minnesota in the summer. It's just such a beautiful place in the summer. So I definitely try to stay close to home at this time of year.
Okay. Very cool. For our final little takeaway, somebody reads your book, which I'll show it again here. What
Thank you.
what is that? What is that overarching lesson or feeling that you want the reader to come away with once they explore this book?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, what I would love them to come away with inspiration. There's so much beauty in our country. We're going through a hard time in our country for a lot of different reasons, but there's still a lot to be proud of in the US, and there's still a lot to protect. Hopefully, this book will give a little inspiration to see it and then try to work toward protecting it. So that's what I would hope that people would get from it.
Okay. Just a good appreciation of what we have.
Yeah, exactly.
And where can they pick up this book?
You can pick it up really anywhere. It's on Amazon. It's in hopefully your local bookstores, and just search 100 Hikes of a Lifetime USA. And I will say there's a 100 Hikes of a Lifetime, which is an international book that precursed this book,
Okay.
written by Kate Sieber. That's also a really
Okay,
nice.
I'll check that one out.
Yeah, it's beautiful too. So
Awesome.
yeah,
Do you have social media or anything that people could find you?
I'm on Instagram, and that's Stephanie Pearson. I don't even know. I should check my Instagram.
It's okay.
It's Stephanie Pearson. And I also have a website, stephanieandpearson.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, folks. I hope you've enjoyed our little visit today. If you have any questions, comments, just leave those below. Or if you're listening on the podcast, there's a section on there where you can just click on there and send an email message to me, and I will forward it on to Stephanie if you have a question for her, and we will go from there. So thank you, Stephanie, for coming on, and thanks everybody for listening. We'll see you out there on the trail.
Thank you, Craig. Fun talking with you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.